Consider the lilies, how they grow. They toil not, they spin not. And yet I say unto you that Solomon in all his glory was not arrayed like one of these. If then God so clothed the grass, which is today in the field and tomorrow is cast into the oven, how much more will he clothe you, O ye of little faith? And seek not ye what ye shall eat or what ye shall drink, neither be ye of doubtful mind.
This is our kingdom, a kingdom of righteousness. Praise the Lord. Praise ye the Lord.
For all these things do the nations of the world seek after, and your Father knoweth that ye have need of these things. But rather seek ye the kingdom of God, and all these things shall be added unto you. And give alms. Provide yourselves bags which wax not old, a treasure in the heavens that faileth not, where no thief approacheth, neither moth corrupteth. For where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. To the kingdom of Israel!
Yahweh Hashem, Yahushua, Yahweh Hashem, Yahushua, Yahweh Hashem, Yahushua, Yahweh Hashem, Yahushua.
The election. An aristocracy, meaning rule of the best. A group or class considered superior to others. A government by the best men in the state. A governing body composed of the best men in the state, and that's the elect. We're about to have it all right? Psalms 37 and verse 11. Then it reads, but the meek shall inherit the earth, and shall delight themselves in the abundance of peace. That word for peace in the Hebrew is shalom, which goes into safety, soundness in body, meaning we're going to truly have rest, welfare, health, prosperity, peace, quiet, tranquility, contentment. So we're going to fully enjoy the planet Earth. We're going to rule and exist within the Lord's creation as we were created to do. I'm ready to rule the world, man. How about you?
Let the golden light of this sunset guide our hearts in peace.
Fear not, little flock, for it is your Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. Sell that ye have, and give alms. Provide yourselves bags which wax not old, a treasure in the heavens that faileth not, where no thief approacheth, neither moth corrupteth. For where your treasure is, there will your heart be also.
All right. Shalom. First and foremost, I would like to give all praise, honor, and glory unto Yahweh Bahashem, Yahweh Shah Bahashem, Rakakadash, and double honors unto the apostles and the elders of GMS who rule well, teach well, being great examples to his younger brothers, and peace and blessings and salutation to the whole collect out there pushing his word in truth and in sincerity across the four winds in the name of Yahweh Bahashem, Yahweh Shah Bahashem, Rakakadash. Pushing to get up out of here. Shalom to the whole collect, the believers, the listeners whom have came back to the obedience of the scriptures through faith in Yahweh Bashem Shai. All right. And what I want to get into with this lesson, all right, is dealing with, y'all, morning news and prophecy. okay, war updates, okay, potential breakouts and more, and potential outbreaks and more, Salakia. So as we know, all right, the Bible, speaks of the end times, being full of, multiple, all right, crisis, man. Okay, and even when you go into the word crisis, it ultimately goes into judgment, all right, because we know that the earth is overdue for righteous judgment, okay, because you look out into the planet Earth, which is ran and ruled by the wicked, well, righteous judgment, doesn't go forth, okay. The scriptures speak about how righteous judgment is slack, all right, in the society, okay, ran by the devil, Esau, Edom, okay. So when you go into, let's see, I think that's the animal line. Let's get this word real quick for crisis, okay? Because we hear this term now, what they say polycrisis, okay? Which crisis, poly, which goes into many, okay? So when you go into the word crisis itself, and if a brother want to post that, righteous judgment doth go forth, okay? I believe there's Habakkuk 1 and 4, maybe 1 and 5. Either a Habakkuk or Haggai, one of them. But if a brother can post that. But let's get this word crisis in the etymology line. All right, because you hear this term polycrisis, where we know poly, goes into many. Okay, so meaning what? So it says crisis, a decisive point in the progress of a disease. All right, also vitally important or decisive state of things, point of which change must come for better or worse, from Latinized form of Greek. All right, crisis, turning point in a disease, that change which indicates recovery or death. And it says, such by Hippocrates, literally judgment. You see, judgment, result of a trial, selection to separate, to decide, to judge. Okay, to separate, decide, or judge. So when you go into this term crisis, all right, the Lord is going to bring judgment forth, man. Okay, in polycrisis, the Lord is going to be judging in many different ways, in many different forms. Okay, so we see all these events, brewing. Well, that's the Lord setting the stage for great judgment. Okay, and Esau, we know, he's going to be a tool, okay, within the judgment, man. All right, that's why you go here to, let's see, I believe that's in Haggai. We'll come back and get that in Jeremiah. Okay, but when you go here to, I believe that's Haggai. Let's see which one or the other. Yep, it's Habakkuk 1 and 4. It says, therefore the law is slack, and judgment doth never go forth. For the wicked doth compass about the righteous, therefore wrong judgment proceedeth. Okay, and this is what the earth is lacking, is righteous judgment. Okay, the earth is in dire need of righteous judgment to go forth. All right, the scriptures say wickedness walk on every side when the vilest men are exalted, man. Psalms 12, and 7 and 8. Okay, so we live in a situation where the vilest men, okay, the most wicked people on the earth are in the high positions. Okay, and they have lax laws when it comes to wickedness, man. Matter of fact, they protect wickedness, man. There's certain laws that protect wickedness, man, that embolden wickedness in this society, man. Okay, so what we're seeing, all right, that the Lord is brewing is judgment. Okay, and Esau is going to be a tool of judgment, a temporary tool of judgment before he's judged, man. Okay, so that's why when you go here to the book of Jeremiah 28, okay, so you go Jeremiah 28 and 8, it said, the prophets that have been before me and before thee of old prophesied both against many countries and against great kingdoms of war and of evil and of pestilence, man. Okay, so what we're doing is the same thing that our forefathers did, the prophets of old. Okay, the Lord will raise them up, all right, to speak against, great kingdoms about what was to come. Okay, so this is not the first time the Lord has used this method of raising up prophets, okay, to prophesy to an empire before it fell. Okay, this is just the latest. This is just his latest. Okay, you know, yeah, this is just the latest of him doing it. You see, this is just his most recent time doing it. So the Lord has raised up the prophets in these latter days to preach against, all right, the kingdom of Esau. Okay, this Edomite empire that runs the earth. Okay, was at the forefront of it. What? Babylon, America. Okay, Babylon the Great, which is America, man. You see? So now you see that the Lord is getting ready to judge, but before he judged, he raised up the prophets. And see, he has raised up so many prophets because the judgment is going to be great. And you look at, the things, war of evil, evil, that just means bad times. So you can include a lot in it. Okay, there's a lot that can be inserted into this word evil. Okay, which just mean bad times. You see, so a war of evil and pestilence. All right, and there's constantly an uptick on these different pestilence, man. Now there's a lot of these bugs. All right, which we'll get into. We know he had the ticks. Okay, that was making people allergic to red meat. So now there's an attack on the cow directly. You have this thing called the screwworm. Okay, you have this Ebola talk. Okay, and all this is happening while you have the World Cup that's to happen in 3 days. Okay, this Thursday, you're gonna have all these soccer teams from all over the world, soccer fans from all over the world coming to all these major cities in America, man. Okay, so we'll see how that's gonna play out, man. Okay, because we know all right how Esau Edom, how this nigga operate, man. Okay, he loves to create these narratives that he can run with. All right, so he can establish his agenda, and we know he has a major depopulation agenda on the books, man. Okay, but the Lord warned us, of these times. All right, and we understand he is. See, Esau is just, like I say, a tool. Okay, judgment doesn't start and stop with Esau. No, he's just a tool within judgment. Everything starts and stops without power. Yahweh Bashem Shai. Okay. 2nd Ezra 16:37 said, "Behold, the plagues draw nigh and are not slack." You see? And we can see that everything is right here at the door. Okay, it's not going to take much, for the Lord to cause a certain thing to happen, and this thing go to the next phase, man. Okay, the buildup is constant, man. It's been a constant buildup to these plagues, man, to major war, to pestilence, to civil unrest, Jacob's trouble, man. Okay, different diseases, man. Hey, everything has been building up, man. The atmosphere is set. People's immune system is trash, due to the food, and a lot of people took the juice, so people's immune system was shot. Okay, the supply chain is fragile as hell. Okay, and it's intentionally made like that gives this devil leverage, man. It makes it easy for him to sabotage, all right, to push his agenda, man, because he wants depopulation and he wants desperation, man. Okay, he wants these things going into this new world order to make the sea him look all right appealing. Okay, as a solution. So he needs, crisis. Okay, he needs chaos. He needs pandemonium. He needs these things, man. All right, but see, it's the Lord's will that these things are going to happen because the Lord, all right, is judging, man, and that judgment going to work his way to Esau. Okay, it said verse 8. It says, "As when a woman with child in the 9th month bringing forth her son, with 2 or 3 hours of her birth, great pains compares to a womb, which pains when the child cometh forth, they slack not a moment." Okay, they slack not a moment. And see what we're going to see, as things continue to become more intense. Okay, and things going to become more continual. Okay, it's not going to be any slacking, it's going to be back to back. All right, and just like a woman that's pregnant, well, it gets to a certain point to where she can't hide her pregnancy, she's showing. You know, it's obvious. You don't have to ask. Is she pregnant? No, it's showing. It's obvious. Well, this is how prophecy is, man. Prophecy is showing itself. We're in the late stages. All right, are these things getting ready to be birthed into the earth, man? These disasters, these judgments, okay, being birthed into the earth. You see, there's no doubt where we at. Okay, the stage is set. So verse 39 says, even so shall not the plagues be slack to come upon the earth, and the world shall mourn, and sorrow shall come upon it on every side. Okay, sorrow shall come upon it on every side, man. So it's going to be a lot, okay, of pressure out here, man, on every side. And it's going to be, things are going to compound. You know, people complaining about, you know, the job market. Well, guess what? Well, what about when the grid go down? Okay. What about when mercenaries are turned loose? You see, what about the teeth of wild beasts, man? It's gonna be on every side. What about the access to food? You see, the draft, the war gonna intensify. People gonna be getting shipped off the war. Okay, America gonna be a war zone, so it's gonna be on every side. You know, because like people think, you know, they look up the draft and, you know, people look like, well, if I can dodge the draft. No, you can't dodge judgment. The draft is just one of many judgment that the Lord's going to have out here, man. Okay, because America will be the worst place to be. All right, when the Most High open up judgment. Okay, so when you go, let's go here. All right, because now they're talking about, you know, the Ebola. You know, because first you had a tick. Okay, first it was this tick. All right, that causes people to be allergic to red meat. Okay, now you have this potential Ebola outbreak. Okay, then you have, you know, now the screwworm, which we'll get into these things. But let's deal with the Ebola. Okay, and see what they're talking about with this, man. Because it's like, okay, what is the devil going to run with? You know, it's like, you know, first it was the Hunter virus. Okay, then that narrative died down. You know, now, you know, this is whole Ebola. You know, so is this devil, he's going to ride with this one. What is he going to do? Okay. And Esau, he can't, you know, keep pump faking, man. The pressure is on this nigga, man. You know, he gonna have to, okay, because it's gonna take drastic measures, okay, to get all right, hey, these Americans, all right, to bend the knee. You know, a lot of them are gonna do it willingly, but a lot of them finna revolt. Okay, so let's play this.
Republic of Congo and Uganda. The International Rescue Committee is warning the Ebola outbreak is even larger and more advanced than official numbers suggest. Medical teams have confirmed more than 300 cases across the Democratic Republic of Congo and Uganda. And now officials are warning the true number of cases could be much higher and growing fast.
I'm sighing on my own today. His name is Peter Stafford. He is an American physician. He's been working at a hospital in Bunia in northeastern Congo since 2023, treating patients, doing the work. Last week, he became the patient. So he's now the first American confirmed infected in the worst Ebola outbreak the world has seen in years. And most Americans have no idea this is happening. And so here's what else you need to know, that the agency that is supposed to protect you from exactly this moment has been gutted. And the country that is supposed to lead the global response walked out of the room. So we really need to practice facts over fear and follow the science. So there have been 17 outbreaks in the DRC since 1976, 17. And we chose right now to fire our disease investigators in the United States. So I'm Dr. Ida Brown, and Dr. Sonia Sloan's not available today. We are AYA, Black and Brown Women Disruptors in Healthcare and Beyond. So what is happening with Ebola, and where do we stand as the United States? The same country that walked away from the WHO, stripped the CDC, and whose health secretary actually spent the last year firing the people whose entire job was to stop this. Let's roll the clip.
We cannot and will not allow any cases of Ebola to enter the United States.
So on May 15th, 2026, the Democratic Republic of Congo officially declared its 17th Ebola outbreak, right? We said 17. 17. So let's just let that sit for a moment. The first known suspected case was a healthcare worker in Ituri province with fevers, hemorrhaging, vomiting, intense malaise, and that worker died at a medical center in Bunia. So if you think about that, a healthcare worker, one of the people on the front lines protecting their community, that's the person who died of Ebola. So that same day, May 16, 2026, the World Health Organization declared that this outbreak is a public health emergency of international concern. So that's PHEIC. That's the highest formal alert in the global health system. So I want us just to talk about the fundamentals, right? Ebola is a viral hemorrhagic fever. It's a severe systemic illness that causes organ failure. And in many cases, it causes death. And the death typically begins with symptoms that look like many other illnesses, right? High fever, intense, profound fatigue. You get some muscle and joint pain. But as it progresses, the vomiting, the diarrhea, the severe hydration, and in some cases, the hemorrhagic complications happen. And that's where you get internal and external bleeding. And so without aggressive supportive care, Ebola can cause multi-organ failure and death within days. And here's the most important thing to understand.
And that's a torturous death, man. You know, the way she's describing it, that's a torturous death. Okay. And she's, going into it, all right, and is making it seem as if, as we know, all right, the medical, the entities that's supposed to be over, these outbreaks and contain particular things and investigate and this and that. Well, these things are being, removed from government. Okay. As if they're just opening the door and they're going to let this thing just do a free fall, man. Okay. So we'll see, we'll see these things, these devils, lately, all right, Esau been on the pivot. Okay. Start with one thing, go to something else. Okay. So we'll see, man. All right. But the way she's describing it, man, that's a torturous death. Okay. Which the scriptures say, if a brother want to post that in 2nd Ezra 8 and 8 and 50, 2nd Ezra 8 and 50, man. But the way she's describing it, man, that's a torturous death to die by Ebola, organ failure, hemorrhaging, external bleed. You see? So let's play a little more.
Understand about how Ebola spreads. It is not airborne. I'm going to say that one more time. It is not airborne. You cannot contract Ebola by passing someone in a grocery store, riding public transit, and breathing shared air. The transmission actually requires direct contact with infected bodily fluid, such as blood, vomit, sweat, saliva, or contaminated surfaces and burial materials. So Ebola is significantly, I'm going to say it again, significantly less contagious than COVID-19 or even measles. But when the transmission does occur, the consequences can be devastating, even fatal. Let's roll the next clip.
With the US, we collaborate at all levels, expert level and high level. We share information, and they're also investing, they're supporting financially. And I know they will increase their support. There is strong commitment at all levels, and I'm really glad to see that. So for the response, I think that's the most important part. With the rest of what they're doing, I think based on their risk assessment, they have, they can do whatever they think is right for them.
So, I want to make sure that our listeners understand that this isn't the same Ebola that we've seen before. There are multiple strains of Ebola, and most people are familiar with the Zaire strain, and that's the one that drove the catastrophic 2014 to 2016 West African outbreak. And for that strain, we have an approved vaccine, RVSV Zepov. The brand name is Ervebo, and it has been a critical tool in outbreak control. But this outbreak is called by Bandiboyo strain, and there is no approved vaccine for that strain.
There you go. Another one, with no juice. Okay, a strain that doesn't have a juice. You see, the Hunter virus, it doesn't have, a juice for so-called, containment. Okay, so all these pestilence, that has been popping up, and don't have, a juice, all right, to combat it, so-called, which we know, okay, these new, all right, juices that they're coming up with, man. Okay, it's not your typical, okay, jump shot of old. Okay, this one is different. Okay, so this gives them more, excuse to introduce, all right, these new juices, okay, to the masses, which is another form of depopulation, and also prepping you for, all right, the device, because there's a lot of things, that they're putting in their juice that makes you compatible, all right, with technology, man. Okay, if it don't unalive you, it's making you compatible, okay, with this technology. You see? So let's play a little more.
And so this distinction really matters because the outbreak went undetected for weeks, and in part, it's because the initial laboratory tests were designed for the Zaire strain, so they came back negative. By that time, Bandiboyo was confirmed. The virus had already established community transmission, right? That's a problem because case fatality rates in the two previous Bandiboyo outbreaks ranged from 30 to 50%, right? So that 3 to 5 out of every 10 people would die from this disease, right? 30 to 50%. There have only been 2 prior outbreaks, one in Uganda in 2007 to 2008, and then one in the DRC in 2012. So luckily, multiple vaccine candidates are now being fast-tracked. The WHO has recommended prioritizing 2 monoclonal antibodies for clinical trials and is evaluating the antiviral Dovsivir as post-op exposure prophylaxis.
Yeah, man. So, yeah, I put the clip in there. You can watch the rest of it. But, so now, this Ebola, all right, is, a narrative that they're, constantly pushing. Okay. And this is these next few weeks, with this World Cup coming to, the States, to these major cities in America, it's going to be interesting. All right. Because I think even because they're saying that it began in Congo, the DRC, Democratic Republic of Congo, but then I believe that the DRC soccer team is supposed to be at the World Cup. Okay, and if this is supposed to be the highest level alert, okay, that you can have, all right, on the virus, then why are the World Cups, being allowed to go forth? Okay, because remember with the C-19, they shut down the NFL, NBA. Okay, had niggas playing in a bubble. Okay, you see, they shut down this, shut down that, travel ban, this, but now, it's just like it is what it is. Okay, let's see, let me see, the DRC soccer team. Yeah, so you just go here, all right, and we'll watch these devils. It'll be interesting how they spin the narrative. So you got, the outbreak supposed to start in the DRC, the Democratic Republic of Congo. So as says the DRC soccer team coming to America. All right, it says yes, the Democratic Republic of Congo national soccer team is coming to America to compete in the 2026 FIFA World Cup. The team is making their historic return to the World Cup, their first appearance since 1974. So wait a minute, they haven't came since 74, but all of a sudden, in your outbreak, okay, in 2026 in May. All right, they make their debut coming back to compete in the World Cup in June. Okay, the Outbreakers in May in the Congo. Okay, but then in June they hit the World Cup and they ain't been since '74. You know, hey, we'll see, man. It's devil, man. And then I believe that you know, the Ebola just gonna be one of many. All right. Well, let's get this precept. And I'm gonna segue to another video dealing with pestilence, man. I believe this is the Ebola. Okay, you know, the hunter can come back up. You know, something new. You know, you can just slap a new name on something else, man. Okay, so let's go. Let's go here. Let's pull this up real quick. Get this precept. So yeah, it's gonna be interesting how they spin their narrative with this World Cup. You know, and I think a lot of times, you know, these Edomites, these elites be playing on the intelligence of you know, you Americans, man. You know, just to see how blatant they can be and test your reaction, man. You know. So when you go to this is the brother GMS Spiritual Art 144. It says 2nd Ezra 8:50 said, "For many great misery shall be done to them that in the latter time shall dwell in the world, because they have walked in great pride." All right. And the scriptures mention, you know, pestilence several times. Okay, which means that's gonna be a tool that the Lord gonna use. Okay, you know, with this, you know, through Esau, okay, and his madness that he got going on, and things that he's gonna release, and he's, you know, manufactured in, you know, his lab, and gonna, you know, set loose, okay, or certain things that, hey, the Most High can make, you know, appear out of thin air, man, and make something that's airborne and fatal and a torturous death, man. Okay, so it's gonna be, you know, a lot going on at the same time. And one of these pestilence, man, all right, he saw, you know, like I said, he's been playing around with these narratives, man. But eventually this thing is gonna be a legit outbreak, okay? And it's gonna start catching bodies, man. Okay, and it's gonna be some miserable deaths, you know, with these different pestilence, man. Okay, as the brother put GMS Spiritual Art 144, 2nd Ezra 15:5. It said, "Behold, said the Lord, I will bring plagues," okay, with an S, "upon the world, the sword, famine, death, and destruction," man. You know, so the Lord constantly mentioned, you know, these plagues and pestilence, okay, times of misery, okay. So the Lord is constantly mentioning these things, man, because the Lord, all right, he's going to use these things as tools of judgment, man. Okay, these things are tools of judgment. I believe that's in just Sirach 39. My brother want to post it, you know, like 39, and is it 30? Maybe. But I'm gonna play this and I look for it. Okay. But let's play this. This is something new on the scene.
Has been making headlines. Welcome back to Live Now from Fox. I'm your host, Anna Marsick. An insect has been making headlines this week. This insect lays its eggs and it hatches larvae that feed on flesh. Take a look at this X post coming from Bloomberg. Screwworm was eradicated from Texas in the 1970s, but this week it returned. For the first time in nearly 60 years, a devastating agricultural insect has entered the United States. The USDA has confirmed the first domestic case of this flesh-eating New World screwworm in a South Texas calf, which has triggered an emergency 12-mile quarantine zone in that Texas county. And this is putting the state's $15 billion cattle industry on high alert. So joining us to break down what exactly the screwworm is and its threat to livestock and pets is Dr. Sonia Swigger. She is a veterinary entomologist with Texas A&M University. Thanks so much for joining us here on Live Now from Fox.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
So first of all, let's just break down what exactly this New World screwworm is and the threat that it poses to livestock.
Yeah. So, like you said earlier, it is a fly and it's a parasitic blowfly, and it lays eggs on wounds of animals or any type of opening or orifice that it has access to. And then those larvae will hatch off and start eating on the flesh of that animal.
And when it eats this flesh, I mean, like, does it just eat away at the whole animal?
Well, I mean, since it's fly larvae, it is a little tough for them to eat and consume an entire animal, but they will feed on it and make wounds very grotesque in the sense. And what really ends up happening is the animal doesn't survive these infestations. So normally the animal will pass before full consumption by the larva, but the impact is severe while they're there and while they're feeding.
So on your screen right now is a video, a picture of this screwworm, and we noted that it's a fly, but it's called a screwworm. Why is that?
Yeah, that was a term that was given to it back in the, probably 50s, 60s. I'm not 100% sure when they started calling it that, but it's because of the appearance of this maggot, so to speak, right? So it has these unique striations, which are actually spines that circulate the body. And then the way it feeds with the mouth hooks down, they kind of have a screw like appearance and a pattern by the way they're feeding in the flesh.
So we know this first case was just recently confirmed in Texas. How did this screwworm come from Central America into the United States?
Yeah, unfortunately, it began moving out of South America through Central America and up into Mexico a couple years ago, right? We've been watching it since 2002, 22 or 2023. But most of that movement is due to moving of animals that were infested with these larvae. And when you move those animals without treating them ahead of time, it can lead to further infestations in other areas.
What do we currently know about the scope of this South Texas infestation, and what exactly are veterinarians there looking for inside the quarantine zone?
Yeah, I'm not there on the ground with the folks because I do work for A&M and we're more educational on our side. But the agencies in charge, which is Texas Animal Health Commission, are implementing what was put into the playbook by USDA APHIS. So there's partnership between both of those agencies, and they're currently conducting quarantines and restrictions and animal inspections, which is the surveillance part of it, in addition to searching and looking for adult flies as well outside that quarantine zone, and also releasing those sterile flies to hopefully eradicate very quickly back out of Texas.
And releasing those sterile flies is essentially how screwworm is treated, right? What's the science behind that?
Yeah, that it's a really cool story because it started so long ago. But previous entomologists, way before my time, Dr. Nippling, Dr. Bushland, developed this procedure in which we sterilize the males in a sense with the radiation, and then when we release them, they mate with the wild females, and it prevents them from being able to lay fertile eggs. So they basically lay unfertilized eggs, and that approach leads to the decrease of the future generations of those flies that we would have from them.
It's a goddamn shame, man. The way this nigga run the earth, this is a goddamn shame. To where you gotta sterilize flies, release them into the wild, because of his, okay, because of his wickedness, man. The earth is just out of whack, man. That's why America just has to be completely eradicated off the face of the earth, man. Okay, and this nigga has to be removed from power immediately, man. Okay, this man creates the disasters and intentional, wickedness in his lab. Okay, then he goes and does another experiment to where something else has to suffer to try to fix it, man. This is crazy, man. You got sterilized flies, man. Okay. Oh boy.
So how quickly does the screwworm spread among cows that are impacted?
Um, I love that question. I'm not sure if I really know the full answer because I have personally never dealt with screwworms in my lifetime because they've been gone longer than that. But it really depends on the population size. Infested animal that was identified can't share that to another animal, so you're not getting infestation sharing between maggots. It's just whether or not adult populations get a chance to basically take hold in an area, and then they'll start laying their eggs after they're a few days old, and then it can get more problematic if we don't react to it.
And as we just saw the return of screwworm this week. Is there a need to be worried across the United States that this can spread and become a bigger issue?
There's a need to be concerned and understand that this is something that's happening. I wouldn't panic. I wouldn't get too, too out of normal behavior for most folks, especially if you're in northern states. But we definitely, people in Texas, anyone that's close to the border near Mexico, we want them to, if they're not already, start looking at their animals on a more regular basis to prevent any infestations to go unrecognized. But if you're in other states, it's more right now just learning about it and understanding what this impact is, just in case. But hopefully, it doesn't get to that point that we have to worry about in other states.
And why is it so
So you got that, the Ebola. All right, now you got the screwworm, to go along with the ticks. All right, that's causing, people to become allergic to, the red meat. So there's, it, you know, it's just all over the place, man. Okay, this nigga just all over the place, man. And then you go from there. All right, let's get a couple of these precepts. Go cue up this next video. All right. So there's an attack on the people, which making them allergic to the meat, to the cattle. Then there's attack on the cattle themselves. And then there's attack on the cattle ranchers. Okay, so this man is going all out, to create disease and famine. Okay, because this man has a major depopulation agenda, man. Okay, so let's go from. All right, let's go here. Let's get this in. It's the brother Najee MS All In 144. It says, fire and hail and famine and death, all these were created for vengeance. All right. So the Lord has everything to his disposal when it comes to vengeance and fire, which we know, all right, this nuclear destruction is going to be the climax of the Lord's vengeance. Okay. Especially here in America, man. You see, but famine is a part of the Lord's vengeance as well. You see, this is the Lord's get back. The scriptures say, miserable are the cities that receive thy sons. Okay, and see, you people in America have no idea, all right, that a higher power is pissed at you Americans, man. All right, the Lord is pissed at your elites, okay, and the citizens of Babylon, man. Okay, and all these things are finna start going forth as vengeance, man. You see, we're finna see our power, really get active in judgment, man. Okay, this is verse 30, Sirach 39:30 said, teeth of wild beasts and scorpions, serpents, and the sword, punishing the wicked to destruction. So we have to remember these pestilence, all right, these plagues, okay, the civil unrest, all right, leading all the way up to the nuclear destruction. This is for the wicked, man. 2/3 of our people, you Edomites, you heathens in America, man. Okay, you elites. Okay. These are what all these things are conjured up, all right, for the punishing of the wicked to destruction, man. Okay? I said the teeth of wild beasts is going to be a whole nother element, man. Okay? The Lord finna have some things happening, and it's going to just be compounded. Okay? One on top of another. Everything just going to be getting more and more amplified, intense. Okay? Because it's the judgment of the Lord getting ready to settle in the earth, man. Okay? So let's go from there. Let's play this. Cause like I say, it's an attack on people, making them allergic to meat. It's an attack on the meat itself, the screwworm. Then it's an attack on the ranchers. Okay, remember the ranchers went from 7 million in the 70s, all right, to just 600,000. Okay, and most of the processing plants in America, all right, I think it's only 4 major processing plants in America, man. All right, so he can easily bottleneck, okay, the supply line of food. you know, with the outbreak and you see, an outbreak or shut down, you know, an outbreak or two will shut down the American, you know, certain food supplies, man. Or certain foods are unavailable, man. Okay, so let's play a little bit of this, and we'll segue to the war bit.
We are so close to famine. There are so many, just so many little things that if they tipped, there would be parts of the country where people would be in really big trouble. So part of my journey, you know, when I realized this was what I needed to build and actually start on solutions and not just talking about the problem, my mentor said the last thing I would ever do as a startup is software. He said, and he was a software developer. He's like, only 1 in 2,000 make it. You just don't want to do it unless you. He goes, I can tell you're passionate about it. I'm probably not going to sway you. So he's like, go. You need to do market research. You need to know for sure that what you think is going to help will. And so you got to talk to people. So I spent 3.5 years asking questions and flushing out the idea. I didn't want people to say it was good. I wanted them to tell me why it wasn't. And during that time, I ended up putting, you know, just talking so much, I ended up running a USDA slaughterhouse in Cody, Wyoming. It's impossible for me to chart you a path from 2020 to why I was in a slaughterhouse, other than that's where God wanted me.
So wait, so you ran a USDA slaughterhouse?
Yes.
In this process. And how many head of cattle were you processing a day?
35 head a week, small facility.
Oh, okay.
So USDA just means federally inspected. They can be as small as I was all the way up to the multi-thousands, right?
I see. Okay.
But we have the same rules, the same regulations, which is also the problem. You're regulating me the same level with 35 head a day as you do with the guy doing 6,000, but it's actually not the same because they have what's called line speeds in those big ones where the animals are moving automatically, like a couple of cuts as it's moving past. Your inspectors are not visually inspecting 6,000 head of livestock a day in a massive facility. But in my house, they're watching every single one. And so the amount of bureaucracy I have to deal with in a small local facility versus the massive facilities, it's not the same. I described it like it's like putting the same number of NFL referee every second because you see every misstep, you know what I mean, from the fighters because you've got so many eyes on. Now, I'm not saying that we were trying to get away from doing things right. We were doing them right. But every little thing, when it stops you, costs time and energy, and it just makes it really complicated to run.
And they do that because they want, all right, to get rid of all, you know, these small companies, okay? Because they're consolidating, you know, where people, okay, can get food, okay? Because the New World Order is going to be permission-based system, okay? No more of all these options, and you got all these different grocery stores and all these different brands. Things are going to be heavily consolidated, all right, within this New World Order, okay? So this guy here, he's a you know, he's dealing with cattle. You know, he dealt with the USDA, he dealt with ranching, you know, he deals with different software and, you know, he's seen, you know, the ins and outs, you know, how the system, you know, sabotages these small, okay, farmers and ranchers, okay, but they're lenient on these bigger corporations, man, you know, which is putting straight, and, you know, poison, okay, and chemical in the food, okay. So you have that going on. Now, let's segue here. Let's go here. Where we at? So now you have, you know, Iran and these small hats, you know, they're beginning, you know, to have conflict. You know, they're beginning to strike, you know, and get at one another. Okay. So there's been a while. I think it's been like what is June? They ceasefires in April. So you're talking about almost 2 months, you know, and you haven't had any, you know, direct, you know, military action, with the small hats in Iran. Because remember, what started this all is the small hats going to the least of the flock, as the scriptures say, is going to draw out. Okay, it's going to draw them out. Okay, so the reason why America and Iran have been in direct conflict, okay, for these last few months, which it has been low intensity as of late, okay, which, America and Iran been, doing very limited, strikes on one another over the last few weeks, okay, but now what we're seeing is the small hats beginning to provoke, okay, escalation. You see, and this is the small hats doing what they're supposed to do, okay, in prophecy, which is continue to draw out the nations for war, okay, and as we know, all right, other prophecies, had to be fulfilled before, the Lord allows His war to just go haywire, So what we're going to see, manage, escalations, okay. We're going to see, certain, strikes, what they call limited, because they want to keep it at a certain level. See, right now, I say is what you call low intensity. What we seen, the first February 28th to April the 8th, that was high intensity. Waves and waves of missiles. A lot of assets being destroyed, a lot of infrastructure was destroyed in a short amount of time. That was high intensity. Now we're seeing, low intensity. Okay, and they've been keeping it low intense. Okay, we see these small hats. We know their role in prophecy is to draw these nations out, man. Okay, so them and these the small hats in Iran, all right, they've their tension, okay, is rising up again, and eventually they're gonna lock back up, man. Okay, so let's play a little bit of this.
Bombardment. So when you look at how Israel often responds and how they have always acted in Gaza, this is par for the course. Now, though the strike by Israel against the basically the Kafir Tebit region, it's about 4 miles north of the Litani River. So when you consider overall geographically, it's quite an incursion further north of the Litani and into the Dakhia suburbs of Beirut. This is something that Iran has clearly said. That is a red line. There is no such thing when it comes to red lines or geopolitical disorder or a road to war, where there's just a little strike or just a little bit. Israel has tested the red line. They pushed the envelope. There was a response. And as you and I discussed over the past week in many discussions, is that this now puts Donald Trump in that very position that you and I have discussed. What now does the U.S. do? And you remember we talked about the U.S. can simply assist in passive defense. The United States can get involved actively in terms of active defense and strikes. Or Donald Trump may sit this one out and say, you're on your own. We're not abandoning you overall, but in terms of Lebanon and in Iran, you're on your own.
And we know, according to prophecy, he can't do that. All right, America can't do that. Okay, so these small hats, because Iran has set a red line, dealing with Lebanon, and they said, well, look, if you strike Beirut, we're gonna strike northern Israel. So the small hats, they tested their red line, and Iran struck, northern Israel. Okay, so now, all right, the ball is in the small hats court, whether they're going to retaliate. Okay, and if they retaliate, Iran's going to retaliate, and they're going to be right back on the escalation level. Okay, it don't matter how many times they try to pause and do this. No, they always going to eventually go right back to that same escalation level, which is going to lead to all-out war. Okay, Esau can try to do this and come from this angle and do this and try to, no, it's going to always lead back to the same escalation ladder that's going to lead to this third world war. Okay? And then America going to be in the same position that they was February 28th. Okay? Forced to fight. All right? On behalf of the small hats, man. Okay? So let's play a little more.
It looks like Donald Trump has taken the option, at least for now, of, hey, you're on your own. I told it anyway. Iran has said they would respond. They have. We now have this escalation ongoing. How do we diffuse it? And as much as Donald Trump wants to continue to talk about peace negotiations or an agreement or a deal, Iran is who suspended these talks directly has been crossed. So Donald Trump's hopes to try to deliver some type of attenuation or step down from this by Monday or Tuesday is not going to happen. And I am not a fearmonger. I simply look at the reality of the situation. I take my experience of over a quarter of a century in low intensity and asymmetric and high intensity warfare, and I look at what is the next logical step. If you ask me, did we know that Israel was going to bomb Beirut? We knew that. Israel Katz said they were going to do that. Didn't necessarily know when, but they have. What's coming next? I don't think Israel is done here. And I don't think Iran's retaliation is done if there's continued strikes. So we are now in another level of escalatory territory that is out of Donald Trump's control.
Exactly. Okay, because it's in the control of Yahweh Bashim Al Shai. Okay, so we see these things, go from high intensity to low intensity, and they're not talked about as much, but it's a continuation. Nothing is going backwards. Everything is continuing on. So the Most High can turn prophecy up, He can turn it down, but it's always a continuing narrative of prophecy unfolding. Okay, now let's go here because I think this is Larry Johnson. He's live now, so I don't know if there's been more strikes or not. Okay, but let's watch this. We'll watch it. Find out at the same time. So let's see what they talking about real quick. Then we get a couple more precepts.
Yeah, you're just saying that to butter me up. I've been wanting. You've been staying busy too.
You're too busy these days.
Yeah. Too bad you can't get paid for it, right?
Larry, I want to start with what has happened yesterday, and we had the attack in Dahia. Finally, the Israel attack. It was an empty building, as they mentioned after the attack. I don't know if they knew that the building is empty, but the attack has happened.
Yeah.
They wanted to assassinate some, Hezbollah commanders, but they managed to kill some people, ordinary people who were close to the building. Then the Iranian response. Yesterday when I did a podcast, a monologue, and I didn't know if Iran would respond or Yemen would respond. I thought that Yemen would respond to what has happened because they literally didn't kill any of the Hezbollah commanders. So that's why I thought that the empty building, that's going to be a response from Yemen, maybe some missiles from Yemen. But Iran has decided to respond it directly, to send a message.
Yeah.
What was the point? Before getting to what is going on between Iran and Israel, what was the point of attacking that empty building? Did they know that building is empty?
No. Destroy the peace. What Pepe and I reported more than a week ago. So, a week ago Thursday, the information we received was that the Iranian Supreme Council issued the warning to Prime Minister Sharif of Pakistan that they were going to stop the withdrawing from all nuclear talks. They were going to not deal with any kind of nuclear framework like a JCPOA, and that they were prepared to detonate a nuke to show their seriousness. And that information was conveyed to the United States. Now, by Pakistan. Throughout this period, Pepe and I have been told through the source that Pakistan remains very optimistic about its prospects for securing a peace agreement, a peace deal that will be called the Islamabad Accords. That will
ain't gonna be no peace deal, man. Okay, ain't gonna be no peace deal. All right, because these small hats, they're gonna make sure that there's no peace, okay, in their region, okay, because they have a role to play in prophecy, man. Okay, and as all these talks about Iran, the nuke testing the nuke. Do they have a nuke? How many they got? Can they come up with more? And we know, all right, that we come into a time, you see, where these nations, they're going to be forced, okay, to go into all out war, okay, and when they get into a certain point, okay, where it seems like no one's going to prevail, man. All right, them nukes gonna come out. Now, let's say, like, we know on this side we have prophecy that had to be fulfilled before that happened. Okay, but we're seeing the groundwork being laid for that to be in place. Everything is being put in place for their prophecy to be fulfilled. Okay, for America to become a desert. Okay, I guess I watched this and filtered through that. Like I said, I haven't watched it; it just came on. Okay, but let's get a couple more precepts. We'll close out. We'll get some more. We'll keep watching that, see what they got going on. But let's see what brothers got. Yeah, this is Brother GMS Spiritual Art 144, Jeremiah 50 and 45 said, "Therefore hear ye the counsel of the Lord, that he have taken against Babylon, and this purpose that he have purposed against the land of the Chaldeans. All right, surely the least of the flock shall draw them out. Surely he shall make their habitation desolate with them." Okay, so the small hats, they're going to make sure that they keep America engaged in this war. Okay, they're going to keep America engaged, and it's only going to escalate. Because there's still a lot of room for escalation. So you still have, Russia and China to get directly involved. Okay, Turkey to get directly involved. You see, you still have that element. So there's a room for, all right, escalation. You see? So these small hats, they done already tied America into this, to where America can't get out. It's a scripture I have laid a snare for Babylon. So Babylon is in that snare. Okay? So now, they're stuck on this path. Okay? Of war. Ain't no reversing. All these peace talks, these are just talks, all right, to buy time as both sides continue to prepare for the next round of fighting. Okay, and these small heads, they want to accelerate this next round of fighting. Okay, and they want America, to keep going full throttle. You see? So, let's get this. Your brother GMS Spiritual Heart 144, Proverbs 21 and 1 said, "The king's heart is in the hand of the Lord. As the rivers of water, he turneth it whithersoever he will." Okay, so from the elites, okay, to these different leaders of these different nations, well, they're all serving the will of the Lord. Okay, even when they think they're serving their own interests, they're serving the agenda of Yahweh Bashim al-Shah. Okay, so we're going to see these nations, continue to be engaged, okay, in these conflicts. Okay, they're going to, you got all type of treachery in the works. Okay, you got, Russia and China still helping Iran with what you call intelligence, when it comes to surveillance and, for targets. Okay, even them striking the small hats. They're saying that their intelligence is coming from Russia and China. Okay, so the elites, if they are going for data centers and pushing surveillance infrastructure with the flock and integrating with Ring camera, which Lord will, it's something we'll tap into. Been watching some things on that. But as these devils are rolling out the infrastructure so they can make this thing mandatory, and then you got the pestilence, which they're going to use to depopulate, and create crisis, and create shutdowns and destroy, the economy, and create civil unrest and uncertainty. So all these things are happening at the same time, man. That's why things are just moving quickly, man. Matter of fact, let's get that in I'm finna say, let's get that in Revelation 16 and 15. Yeah, let's get there in Revelation 16 and 15. And we can end on that because everything's going to be, what we're going to see, things are only going to speed up. Okay. Things are only going to speed up. All right. And things are going to be more intense. So this is where we at now, to where things are going to speed up. Okay. And everything is going to get more intense. Okay. So when you go, let me see. Real quick. This is Revelation 16 and 15. It says, "Behold, I come as a thief. Blessed is he that watcheth and keepeth his garment, lest he walk naked, and they see his shame." Okay, so Yahweh Shai is going to come on this place like a thief. It's going to be quick, because most people are not watching the build up, to prophecy being fulfilled. This is a society that's easily distracted. Okay, the NBA finals, make a nigga forget about what's going on in the world. The World Cup make people forget about, the realities of prophecy that's unfolding in the world. And that's how Yahweh Shai is going to come, as a thief, because things are going to be happening quickly. Because once these things, really hit, people are going to be overwhelmed. Their minds are going to fail them, and before you know it, these nukes going to be shot off, and Yahweh Shai going to be here, because really, before you know it, the MOTB is going to be mandated. Then the nukes going to be shot off, and then Yahweh Shai is going to be here, man. These things are going to happen, back to back to back. It's going to be quick. So, yeah, I'll leave it there. Lord will, you brothers, all right, and you few sisters, all right, we're edified once again. We're going to give all praise, honor, and glory unto Yahweh Bahashem, Yahweh Shai Bahashem, Rakakwadash, and double honors unto the apostles and the elders of GMS who rule well, teach well, being great examples towards younger brothers. And peace and blessings, salutations to the whole elect. Shalom.